So I'm going to show you how to access the MIDI controller data within Logic. All I have here is a simple drum beat that I've programmed in using my mouse. So everything sounds very uniform, everything is perfectly in time, and everything is at the same velocity. If we have a listen to this, so effectively what we're listening to there is a drummer that can hit the hi-hat at exactly the same volume every single time, the bass drum, the snare drum, and so on and so forth, which isn't a particularly natural performance. So we want to access the hyperdraw or controller lane in Logic, and we do that with this little tab down here. I'm just going to expand it so we can see it a bit clearer, and what we're looking at by default are the note velocities. This is the strength at which the notes were played, and you can see that they are all absolutely identical, all set at 80. So if I highlight my hi-hats, they then turn white, the corresponding hits turn white. So I'm just going to move them out by clicking on one of them and pulling them down so I can see them a bit clearer. So if I was a real drummer, I would be performing these at slightly different velocities, so I'm just going to randomize these myself. Highlighting the ones that I'm selecting, just to make sure I don't click on the wrong one. And then we could do the same with the open hi-hat. I can do exactly the same for my bass drum, so if I click on the key, it will actually select all of the bass drum hits that correspond. And I can just move these out of the way just so I can see where they are. And I'm now going to just adjust these ever so slightly. Checking which ones I'm moving just to make sure I don't move something unintentionally. And the same for my snare hits. Now with my snare hits, I have two different types of playing. I have the standard rhythm on the second and fourth beat, but I also have a little fill at the end. So naturally you would expect them to be slightly different velocities, so I'm just going to adjust this one. With these last two, we need to think about how the drummer might actually perform these. So typically this would be played with a right followed by a left hand for a right-handed drummer. So our right hand would hit the drum harder than our left hand. We can have a listen to this to see if it sounds any more natural than before. So we've used velocity to be able to make this into a more natural performance. Another advanced feature of Logic is to do something called humanize, and that's where we take the notes that are snapped on the grid but shift them ever so slightly. So I'm going to select the notes that I want to affect, and I'm going to go into functions, in transform, and select humanize. What we are looking at here are the note positions as well as note velocities. This is 10 ticks. This is a measurement used in MIDI in terms of the distance. I'm going to leave it set to 10 ticks. I don't want to increase that anymore. It would probably start to sound a bit too unnatural. So by default this is set up quite nicely for to humanize a drum beat. I already have the MIDI information selected underneath, so I'm going to click on Operate Only. What we now see, if I zoom right in onto my MIDI information, is that the notes now start ever so slightly around their original start positions. Much more likely in terms of a natural performance. If we have a listen to this,